Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hello, it's Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I have conversations with successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Vanessa Laughlin, the founder of a personal crisis management firm that specializes in helping corporate employees through life's toughest times, and Casey Gromer, a fractional integrator who discussed with me the challenges of moving from a solo entrepreneur to building a profitable agency with team members. Be sure to check out these and other past episodes on your favorite podcast app. Today's episode is brought to you by Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is a fractional CFO agency dedicated to supporting B2B service companies. If you're looking to uplevel the financial strategy and leadership in your business, visit claracfo.com to learn more. Or feel free to email me directly at hannah@claracfo.com. Today's guest is Jamie Van Cuyk. Jamie is the owner and lead consultant of Growing Your Team and is an expert in hiring and onboarding teams within small businesses. Drawing from over 15 years of leadership experience, Jamie empowers women business owners and leaders to expand their unique businesses by teaching them to master the hiring process. By learning the dynamics of each company and their specific needs, Jamie provides bespoke hiring frameworks and comprehensive guidance that helps women entrepreneurs gain the confidence to hire like a pro. Jamie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am excited to talk today. Hiring has been on my mind. We've just been hiring people. And also this is a podcast for service-based companies. So people are very, very, very important. So thank you for being here. I'm excited to have this chat today. I am curious if you could tell us what inspired you to start your own business?
Ooh, okay. So I feel like there's a few different layers here. So being inspired to start my own business really goes back to my dad ran a business. He owned his own business when I was growing up. And I just liked the flexibility that provided for him. He ran a machine shop, so it wasn't like flexibility like today that you could pick up and work from wherever, but I liked that he was able to always be there when it was something of importance for us kids. And he would sometimes go back and then work in the office or work in the shop in the middle of the night to make sure the order and stuff got out for his clients. But I was able to see the life that he created and that he was able to really do it on his own terms. So that kind of always sparked of, I want to be able to do that one day. And then fast forward 2 years later, probably about a year or so before I decided to leave corporate, I was actually having a conversation with my dad. And before my dad started his own business, he used to work for Kodak. I'm from the Rochester, New York area. So almost everybody who lives there, a parent has worked for Kodak at some point in time in their career. And he made comment that he could have made a lot more money if he kept working for Kodak. He was an engineer. His name was on certain patents and everything that came out of Kodak. And especially like they're in their heyday and everything. But the life he was able to create for himself mattered more than the money. And I was just like, ooh, that matters so much more. It's not money is important, but when you look at the life you have, the dollars aren't necessarily always the first thing you think about. You think about what you were able to do and the experience that you had and being there for your kids and being there for your family and whatever. And that matters more. So I was like, okay, I felt like at that point in time, I was in this career where I was happy and I was content, but I wasn't reaching my goals. I wasn't, fulfilling what I wanted to do, big picture. And I was like, all right, I need to start getting serious about when am I going to start my own business? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then it came down to, I was at work one day and it was just one of those days at work where everything seemed to be going wrong. My team was fantastic team, but they were really annoying me that day. My boss was annoying me. And I had gone back to work. This was after my second daughter was born. My mom had been watching my daughter. I knew I needed to find either a nanny or a daycare because my parents were snowbirds. They'd be leaving the state of Florida soon to be going back up to New York. And the placement, the daycare I thought I was going to be taking my daughter to, let me know that while they had a spot for her, it was going to be in 8 months, not in the 8 weeks that I needed. And I was just like, that's it. This is the kick in the butt that I need to leave my corporate job and start building the business that I always wanted. So I figured out then I'm like, how am I going to build a business with my 8-month old daughter at home? And it was a different business than I had now, but it was that kick I needed to get out of corporate and actually follow my dreams.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Sometimes people fall into it accidentally, but it sounds like you kind of always like knew that there might be
Yeah.
something there for you. I love that. My dad was also an entrepreneur, so I love hearing people's stories and how they ever even heard of it as a potential, life path at some point in time. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you guys do for clients. So you say, like, we hear hiring expert, but what does that mean? What do you actually do to help clients?
Yeah. So at growing your team, our goal is to really guide and educate our clients so they can find the right person for their team. So they're growing their business. We work with a lot of very small micro businesses where hiring is still new, it's fresh. A lot of our clients have made mistakes with hiring in the past, and they're feeling a lot of times like, I don't know if it's worth it to hire again. Am I going to find the right person? So our goal is to really help people feel confident with their hiring decisions. And that really focuses a lot around teaching people how to actually navigate the hiring process, how to start off with identifying who you actually need on your team, not just what tasks need to be completed, but who's actually going to fit in with your organization, with your culture, with your management style, with the team that you already have. Who are you going to be happy with? So we focus first on helping clients figure out who is that big picture idea candidate that they need, and then how to find that person. So while we offer a few different services within these, all our services fall under two main buckets. So the one is consulting. So after we help our clients figure out who they need, we help make sure that they have the knowledge and tools to find that person. So they're doing the hiring, but we're providing them tools, we're educating them, and we're helping them write their job descriptions and interview guides. They have everything that they need in order to feel that they're making a confident decision. And then we also offer full service recruiting, where myself and my team do all the upfront recruiting work. So we post a job, we review all the resumes,
Mm,
we complete all first round interviews, we handle all candidate communication. So that way our clients can focus on running their businesses, and they only have to come into the recruiting process to do those final interviews and make the decision. And we still focus around a lot around education there as well. So we're helping make sure, like, even though we took majority of the work off their plate, do they still feel that they have all the knowledge to complete that final interview well and make good decisions?
mm. That's great because I think with the size of the businesses that you're working with, we work with that size too, obviously, like sometimes businesses with less than 10 employees. We work with businesses that have more than 10 employees. I'm sure you do as well. But I think that hiring becomes like sort of the elephant in the room sometimes of, hey, we know we need to do it, but like nobody wants to do it and nobody has the time to do it. So I
Right.
love the idea of being able to like get help specifically for this. Is that is that typically why people are coming to you is when they just don't have the capacity on their team?
For some of our clients, yes. Typically, our
Mhm.
clients that sign up for our full service recruiting package, when they're looking for to get capacity on their team through hiring, but they're recognizing that they don't have the capacity to do the hiring. So they
Mhm.
look at everything else. They're saying, maybe I've done this before. Maybe I am an expert in hiring. I know how to navigate the process, but I just don't have the time to do it. Or they're like, I don't even know what to do, and I don't have the time to do it. So that is like the one reason why people come to us. The other reason is they're recognizing that they've been in their own way of getting good hires in the past. So they really didn't know what to do. They rushed through the process. They didn't have the right tools and knowledge. So now they're looking for ways to ensure that they're doing it right, because they realize how expensive it is when they make a bad hire.
Yes. Yes, I've been there. It's happened before and in this business and then also previous businesses that I have been involved in. And I think that's the thing. It's like sometimes you think you should know how to pick a good hire if you're working inside a business, but sometimes like that is kind of a skill, being able to go right out the gate, starting a business and then just selecting the right people to join your team. If you do it right and you make great choices every time, you're probably the lucky ones. Like I would imagine most of us probably have some stories where maybe we hired the wrong person the first couple times around.
Oh, yeah. And it happens all the time because we don't realize how difficult it is. And it's not one of those things where at times it feels difficult. So we're like, oh, this is easy. I got it. I put out a job post, I interview a candidate, I make a decision. How difficult is it? But there's so many layers to the hiring process. And if you don't realize that you're missing some of the layers, you're going to have a hard time finding that right person. And typically you don't find that out until after the person is hired and you have them on your team, and then things are not working out. And then you're left with an employee that's either taking all your time from a management perspective, or an employee that ends up leaving or you have to fire because it's just not right for either side.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I'm curious if you know, I think a lot of people, the idea of completely outsourcing or outsourcing parts of hiring sounds really great. And we've done it ourselves. We just hired 2 new people and we definitely outsourced parts of the recruiting process to an outside agency. Um, but do you feel like where is it incredibly important that either the business owner or someone internal to the business is a part of the hiring process? Because I wanna make sure
Yeah.
that we don't just totally
Yeah.
outsource it to somebody else without understanding the critical parts.
Yeah. So even if you outsource the hiring, it's important to know that you can never remove yourself completely from the hiring process because you still need to be making that final decision. Someone cannot be making the decision on behalf of your company of who's going to come work for your company. They can do all the upfront work to narrow down the candidate pool to the top people that you should speak with, but you still have to be making the decision because you're going to be working with this person on a day-to-day basis. Until your team reaches a certain size, they're most likely reporting directly to you. So having a good rapport with that person is important, and someone else can get you part of the way there, but they can't help you cross the finish line. You need to cross that finish line. So it is really important that you have the skills, or your team member who's going to be making that final hiring decision, because this person's going to be reporting to them, has the skills in order to be able to complete interviews and determine if someone is a right fit. Not just do I connect with this person personally, but are they the right fit for the role? So you can't really ever get completely out of the hiring process until you build a management team where that person's going to be reporting to someone else. But someone on your team always needs to be part of hiring. But as we talked about, you don't have to be a part of every part of the hiring process. It is okay to outsource and get that support that you need, and just make sure that you're there for that final decision, that you're making that final decision on who's joining your team.
Mhm. Yeah, we were able to outsource, like we posted CFO roles and gosh, we had hundreds of responses on LinkedIn, like hundreds and hundreds of responses. And although that was great, I looked at it and immediately just shut it down. I was like, I can't do this. There's no way I can screen all these people. And we were able to like use our HR company to be able to do that for us. But um, that screening process would have taken so long for me to do. I think it would have just gotten too overwhelming. I never would have gotten to it, as the leader of my company. Like, as much as I kind of want to see the types of people that are coming in, I also was so thankful to just have this like short list sort of given to me
Mhm.
to say, like, here's like the top 5 candidates that after we've screened all these 100 every single time. And that was just, to me, I was immediately like, just thinking to myself, dollars well spent.
Yeah.
Dollars well
Yeah.
spent.
It's really one of those things that you look and you've had 100 applicants after it's been open for a weekend, and you're like, where do I start? How do I get through these people? And you're busy. You don't
Yeah.
have time to go through them all. And I feel like unless you're really well versed at reviewing resumes, you spend way too much time on each resume because you're looking at every little detail, you're dissecting it, and you're trying to find out, like, you know, everything about them, and you're creating the story about this candidate. And for us that are, you kind of expert recruiters that are doing this day in and day out, we know exactly what to look for on a resume, that we can review them very quickly. So us reviewing 100 resumes takes way less time than you reviewing 100 resumes.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, trust us. We know what we're doing. We know how to weed through those and select the right people. We know how to conduct that first interview to narrow it down. So that way you only have to focus on the top people, the people that are really worth your time, because not every candidate's going to be worth your time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And then a lot of people are just applying for everything and they didn't even read the job description. So you got to weed through those people too, unfortunately.
Yep.
So I know a lot of traditional recruiting agencies will go and say, yes, we'll find that role for you. And then the fee will be a percentage of the salary or something. And that can be, I don't know, anywhere from 25% to I think I've heard as high as 50% sometimes for that. And so that I've seen some clients, kind of balk at that idea because it's almost like, wait a second, is it really more work to hire somebody who is a higher salary, or is it maybe more work to actually like potentially hire like a lower level, lower salary individual, um, more entry level? So I'm curious, like how you decided to price your services. We don't have to talk about exact prices, of course, but like, are you going with a traditional model, or did you want to do something different? And like, tell me about the thought process there.
Yeah, so we are different than a typical recruiting agency there. We do not charge a percentage, we charge a flat fee. And the reason we decided to do this is that percentage is just doesn't work for a lot of small businesses. It it seems, even if at the end of the day it factors out to the same number of dollars that you're spending on a recruiter, it just seems too big when you're looking at percentages, especially when you're hiring for some smaller roles or part-time roles. It just seems like a huge number at times. And especially those bigger roles, you're like, okay, now I can afford this bigger role and now I have to pay, wait, how much more? And and we kind of look at it like you kind of ask the question, is it really more work to recruit for some positions than other positions? In some positions, the answer is yes, it does take more work to do some positions than other positions. We work mostly with small businesses, but occasionally we work with small nonprofits as well. And we work for those ones, we do executive director recruiting. That's
Mm.
a completely different beast because you're working with the board. You typically have more rounds of interviews, more people that are making the decision. And so those ones take a lot of work. The next position that takes the second amount of work, I would typically say, is admin roles. And part
Ah,
of the reason that it takes a lot of work for that one is you have to do more interviews because there's other positions you can tell a lot more of their skill set from a resume. You can pick up on certain things and levels of experience. A lot of times with an admin role, you can't really know a whole lot until you're talking to the person and
mm,
you're digging into, what does it mean when you say you did calendar management? What does it mean when you said you did this? And some of those things. So sometimes you have to do more interviews to weed out who's a good candidate and who's a not so great candidate. And I'll also be honest, is the lower level pay the position is, and typically admin roles are some of the lowest level paid employees in an organization, the more likely people are to not show up to that interview.
yes.
And so you can have 10 interviews scheduled in a week and only 5 candidates show up. Then you never know which 5 are going to show up. So sometimes it's just a lot more work. And so we kind of look at it, we're just like, well, our team needs to get paid for the work that they're doing, not just the perceived value based on the role. So we charge a flat fee. We find it works a heck of a lot better for our clients because it's easier for them to digest. It's easier for them to budget. The other reason why it works for us is because often we're working with clients that are adding a role for the first time. They don't actually know how much they're going to pay that position when we start working together.
Mm,
They might have a rough idea of their max budget for this role, but they don't know exactly what that pay scale is going to look like. And we help them do the research. So if we charge them a percentage, they might go in thinking that the budget for us to work with them is X. And after we do that research, it's Y. And they might then feel like, wait, I don't have the money to pay for this project because not only do I have to find more money to pay for this team member, now I have to pay more money for a recruiter. And it just doesn't work for our clients. It just makes more sense to say, if you want to work with us, this is what it's going to cost. Now, we do a little bit of different pay scale based on the type of position. So we have one for admin roles. We have one for anybody who is then kind of like that individual contributor in an organization. And then for senior leadership and sales positions, we charge another rate. just because it just based on the type of work we do and what we offer for each one of those positions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. I like predictability. And I mean, maybe that's just my bias towards being able to budget for things, but I do like to be able to have that. So that's really cool. And also just kind of like breaking the norm of, hey, this traditional model, just because it's always been done in these recruiting agencies that way, that doesn't mean that's how we have to always do it. So I love that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so shifting a little bit to talk more about how you're doing things in your business. We just talked about your revenue model and how that's different. What does your team look like? Like, how are you structuring your team right now with having other people do part of this hiring
Yes.
process?
Yeah. So right now, I am the lead on all the client projects. So I am the one handling most of the client communication and all those meetings and helping develop what we call the hiring strategies. So the hiring strategy is after we take our clients through a series of questions to help them really uncover who it is that they need on their team, not just the tasks, but once again, like who's going to be successful in the role, that idea candidate picture. We write their job posts, we write their interview guides, depending on what package they have, some other documents in there to prepare them. So I take the lead on creating all those strategies. And then I have some team members that help with either completing interviews or at least reviewing resumes and helping to schedule interviews for the projects where I am the lead interview for them.
Nice.
So
That's
they're just
great.
helping people, a lot of team members just helping in the background to coordinate things and help things move along.
Yeah, I like that. Let's see, but as you've been like growing the business, what have been some of the financial challenges that you've had as you've just been trying to figure out, what works for you, pricing, expenses, all the things. What has been one of the things that's maybe been surprising?
So one of the things I will talk about pricing at first. One of the things that pricing was hard for me, I would say at first, which I think it is for a lot of small businesses. You're like, I don't know what I should charge. I don't know what is right. Knowing kind of that, other recruiting firms are going off of this percentage, and it's like, okay, well, they're also a bigger company. They have more expenses. What does that look like for us? We're working with small businesses, not necessarily the same target audience. So what is affordable to our clients and what is not affordable to our clients? And I feel like so many businesses, we way undercharged at first. And one of the things that I had to get myself to realize early on in my business was I wasn't necessarily my target audience. I wasn't at the point yet where I was going to be hiring a full-time employee. So of course, I couldn't afford my services yet, but I wasn't my target audience yet. I needed to look at the revenue level and where my target audience where wasn't their business in order to say, is this a fair price to be charging them, not only based on what it costs us to do the work, but what it's going to cost them and cost versus like bringing in the position and everything to help. So having to get that mindset thing out of my pricing is I'm not my target audience. Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I could be my target audience, but at the beginning, I wasn't. My business was not at the level of someone I'm going to go after to say, that's my ideal client.
Yeah. That's huge because I think that a lot of times when we start, what's affordable is put through a lens of what you see and the financial decisions you're making currently. And
Mhm.
then, thinking about being able to step back and be like, no, 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 like this is actually, I need to be stepping into my client's lens. I need to be stepping into their shoes and saying, wait, what is not just affordable, but what is like the right pricing for this? I think that that's like really huge. I did the same thing. I think I've talked to so many business owners that when they first started, the first thing they say is, "Oh, I was not charging enough." So
Mhm.
part of that does sometimes seem to be the growing pains of building business.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious now, like, what are some metrics that you pay attention to in your business as you growing your team, growing your team?
Yeah. So some of the things that I pay attention to, just one, we track time wise everything that we're doing for our clients because I want to make sure that when we're breaking things down and we're looking at, or I'm bringing in a team member to help with a certain project, is it profitable?
Yeah.
And so some of the things to look at is like, well, how much time on average is it taking us to fill a certain type of position? How much time does it take us to create a hiring strategy And so that way I can sit there and kind of and internally to myself justify my pricing and everything. So we track the time, we track our time. We also track a lot of where our leads are coming from. So
Mm,
where are we getting our clients? So that way we can make the decisions of what we want to invest in. So I do a lot of podcast guesting.
yeah.
I pay money for someone to go and pitch me to be on podcasts, which is how you and I first connected.
Yeah.
And to me, that is money well spent because I've tracked the revenue that is brought in based on the leads that I get from being on podcasts. And so to me, that's very important. I've looked at those numbers and decided other things were not good for my business. And the
Yeah.
thing about it is, I was a part of a local business group that got me some of my very first clients. So for a while, I was a part of it. I was like, I'm getting business from this. This is great. And then my business kind of changed and evolved and everything. And I stopped getting business from that group because the people in that group were no longer my target audience.
Hmm.
And I liked being a part of the group because of the social connections and everything that I had. But it was having to kind of step back and say, this is no longer a revenue generating source for my business. It doesn't justify the cost of me going to this or being a member. I can occasionally go to these events because they have a non-member rate to get into some of the events, but I can't justify the yearly expense anymore. So it's being able to track those numbers of where my leads are coming from to make sure that I'm spending not only my time, but my money wisely when it costs to be a part of something.
Yeah. That's really smart. I love that because marketing spend can just balloon so easily to where it's like, well, it might be good to do that. It might be good to do that. Maybe I should be a member of this. Maybe I should be a member of that. And I always try to tell people to like, kind of streamline like what is the most impactful. Like, I mean, and also like just from a time perspective, can you even participate in all these different networking groups? Like, does that even make
Right.
sense for you? If you're also going to be podcast guesting a bunch, are you going to also have the time to make those regular meetings that are at 5 a.m. on a Thursday morning or whatever
Right.
some of these are? So I think that's really smart to look at that. If you like with everything that you know now, if you had been able to invest in something sooner to grow your company, what do you think you would have put some money towards?
So the right marketing messaging help. And it's one
Mm.
of those things where I don't think I could have invested in too much sooner, but I think it made a huge difference once I did. Because the reason why I say I couldn't invest in it too much sooner is I feel like we sometimes do a lot of fine tuning it with our businesses at the beginning. So if you get messaging help, that messaging is probably going to change as your business changes a little bit.
Right.
But I realized that I talked about things from my perspective and not necessarily what my clients needed to hear to understand that they needed to purchase from me. So I was just like, I know all this information about interviews. Let me tell you everything. Let me tell you everything. Let me tell you everything. And it's like, oh, wait, they're not at that stage yet where they can absorb everything. So what do they need to know? So
Mm,
being able to say, and I feel like for the longest time, I had a really hard time telling people what I did or why it was important or things like that, because I just didn't understand how to break it down for an outsider. So having someone being able to listen to me ramble about what I do, why I do it, all these things, and come back and say, here are the words that you should use. Here's the messaging you should put out on your website. Here is how you can clearly communicate this. It really made a huge difference.
mm. That's great. I love that. I haven't heard that one yet, but I
Yeah.
totally understand that pain point, and I'm probably going to ask you who you used for that
Yeah.
after
And
this.
I feel like for me it was a little bit different because like we didn't and we still don't really typically go around and call ourselves a recruiting agency,
Yeah.
because we view ourselves as very different than the standard recruiting agency. We're a lot about the guidance and education and consulting and everything, because that even goes into our recruiting packages. And there's not that many people out that do what we do. As you
Mm,
mentioned, you worked with your HR company. So HR people know HR companies do recruiting, but it also does so many other things for you. So as a
yeah.
standalone lone company that focused on hiring education, there really wasn't a whole big market for it when we started. So it was like trying to explain, yes, there's this thing that happens in business. We're a company that helps you become better at this, but people weren't used to hearing it. So it's like having to really figure out that message. So it's like, this is what we do and this is why it's important. And yes, we know you don't really hear about this too much, but here we are.
Yeah. I like that because I mean, yeah, if you're different, that's good. Differentiation is great from a competitive standpoint. But if you're too different to where people can't put you in a mental box to be able to understand like when they should call on you, then
Mhm.
you're too different. And then
Yep.
nobody's going to call you because they don't get it. So you have to find that sweet spot of being different, but also that people get it and
Yep.
frame it there. Um, I think that's like a good reminder. We also we did an interview with Lindsay Peterson about branding, and we had a little bit of a conversation about that. So if anybody's curious to learn more about that, you should go back and check out that episode too. So if I gave you, and I'm not going to because I don't have this kind of money, this podcast is not that successful yet. If I were to give you $50,000 to spend on your business, what do you think you would do with it?
Ooh, good question. Um, Ooh, I'm trying to wonder. All right. So I think one of the things that I would do would be use it to hire an additional team member to help me some with the client work. And the reason I think I would do that is looking at, because once again, I talk about where a lot of my leads and everything come in, and it's through podcast guesting, it's going out and building relationships. And sometimes those relationships take a long time to become fruitful because I work with small businesses that might hire a new employee once a year, or if they get a really good team, once every other year, or as they continue to grow. So sometimes I build a relationship for a long time before someone is even potentially needing my services.
Mhm.
So to be able to put more time into building those relationships and get me out of some of the client work, I feel like would make a huge impact on my business.
Yeah, I like that. Definitely. I think when you're kind of like the main consultant and you're growing, the bit like you are kind of in charge of like all the business development and any relationship management, networking, that kind of thing. Having that first person on your team that can do the same thing you can do as far as like actually deliver on client work um, is scary, but also like, you know, pretty game changing can be at the
Yeah.
same time. But you also
Yeah.
like so important because you have been in charge of like that client facing relationship. And then all of a sudden bringing somebody else into that, you know, have to trust that person. But good thing is you guys are experts in hiring. So you'll find that right person.
I know, but it really made such a big difference. I remember when I hired my very first assistant, and it was I called her a project assistant. She wasn't just a general assistant for my company. Her only job was to review the resumes as they came in, determine if they should get an interview, and then would schedule the interviews on my behalf. And it was a summer, and I was traveling a lot with my kids, and I was working 2 to 3 days a week. So every week I had Monday and Friday off, and I was working mostly Tuesday through Thursday, and some weeks I would have one of those days off. And I knew when I came in on Tuesday, everything would be scheduled for me. So all I had to do was come in and do the interviews and then do my write-ups from the interviews and get them off to my clients. I didn't have to review a resume. I didn't have to worry about scheduling. All of it was done for me. And it was such a game changer that I was able to spend that time with my kids and not being like, oh, well, let me go take 30 minutes and review some resumes and send out interview requests and then coordinate those interviews. I could just show up and do what I needed to do because I didn't have to coordinate the interviews. I didn't have to review resumes. I had an assistant that was doing that. And it really proved to me that, yeah, like I focus on what I need to focus on within the client work. I don't have to do everything.
Yeah. That's so wonderful when you get to that point where you are like, oh, that's what help is for. And actually they're doing a great job and they're probably doing it better than I am because I don't have 20 other things that are pulling out my attention to all these different places. So I love that. Well, I have one last question for you, but before I ask it, I'll make sure to point people to your website, which is growingyourteam.com. So people can go and check out Jamie and what she has over there. And the last question I have for you is what is a business book that you think small business owners should read?
Yeah. So the book that I recommend all the time is called Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette.
Oh,
I absolutely love this book. And It's not written as a small business book. It is a leadership book, and it's about a lieutenant, I believe is his title. I hope I got that right, in the Navy. And when my husband bought me this book, I was just like, I don't care about like the military and military strategy and all this stuff. So what do I care about? And he goes, no, it's supposed to be a great leadership book. I've heard a lot of great things about it. I think you'll love it. So I was like, all right, let me give it a try. It was the first business book that I felt like I couldn't put down. And I read it from like cover to cover, and I felt like it was so actionable. And it's all about turning people on your team into self-leaders and how to guide them to think of them for themselves, and how to guide them to think strategically and of the big picture and of the details, and not be afraid to bring things to your attention and stuff like that. And he was able to, as I said, he was a lieutenant in the Navy, and he was stationed on a submarine. I think it was a submarine. But anyway, it was a place where when he was originally assigned there, it was kind of labeled as the last stop in people's Navy career. If they were assigned to this place, they weren't re-enlisting. If they reached the end of their time when they were there, their end of the required time, they were leaving the Navy. It then became a point when he was there and leading this, that it became one of the highest re-enlistment places, that their percentages just increased, the people so much that wanted to re-enlist when they were there. And people were actually asking to be assigned to work on this, just because he changed the entire dynamic of the team. And I was able to take that and look at it and realize some things that I was doing in my leadership to really empower my team. And sometimes people would ask me back when I was in corporate, they're like, what are you doing that your team functions so well, that you don't have these problems on your team? And before I read the book, my answer would always be like, I don't know. I just have a really good team. I got lucky with really good people on my team. And it was a team that I inherited. So I didn't hire that team. So I was just like, I was just lucky. And then I found out that it wasn't luck. It was because I was actually applying a lot of these strategies. So I've recommended this book to a lot of people, and they've said it's actually made a huge difference in their leadership style as well, and creating those self-leaders on their team.
That is awesome. I have never heard of that. So I just wrote it down. And yeah, we'll make sure to link it in the show notes as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Well, Jamie, thank you for being on the show. This has been really fun. And for people who want to go and check you out, is there any other place that they should go and find you?
Yeah, the other place that we hang out a lot is over on Instagram. And then I do have the Growing Your Team podcast, which you can get to on all major podcasting platforms, or at growingyourteam.com/podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode, and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.